Hi, it's a pleasure to meet you today, Professor. So, many of our students currently considering an application to the international relations degree. Can you please share with us your opinion? What would distinguish a strong international relations applicant beyond just good academic results?
Yes, thank you. I think that what would make the difference is someone who can has some kind of some clear demonstrated interest in engaging with the world beyond their own culture and their own sort of national context. And this can take many forms. Right, for instance, someone who is learning more than foreign languages. So that can always be a good sign of someone who's suited for that kind of studies. Then you have people who've engaged with all sorts of volunteering schemes. Sometimes these can be quite local as well, but with sometimes the framing of that engagement is global in itself. And so, apart from the grades, I'd say that languages and a clear, demonstrable desire to engage with the world beyond their own national context is always desirable, and that's what would make the difference most of the time.
Another question from our student is that what do you notice would be the thing that students most frequently misunderstand about a degree in international relations at the university level?
Well, there's a number of things, but the first one that comes to mind to me, and perhaps the most important one, is very often students misunderstand the kind of career that it leads to, right? In the sense that, of course, everyone will assume that international relations will lead you into the foreign services, or working in foreign policy, working for international organizations, and it does that. Of course, many of our graduates find work in NGOs, international organization, government agencies, that's for sure. But also, people tend to underestimate the career need in the private sector for our graduate who do international relations. So here nowadays, most consultancy firms, most major financial institutions, and so on, will have a need for graduate in their research units. Right? They have a geopolitical risk analysis unit to help to help their financial institution make good decisions and so on. So these are probably one of the most important employer for our graduate, more than government, more than international organizations, and so on. So that could be one of the misunderstanding. The other one could also be about another misunderstanding. Could be about the range of issues that there is. International relations can be very, very broad, very inclusive. It can be very, very specific as well. So there's different ways of doing that degree. So it's very often international relations degree will allow you to make either a very focused approach where you will basically study, let's say, strategic studies. So questions of national security, questions of intelligence gathering, and that sort of thing. But also, international relations is also about thinking more critically about the world. What is global justice? What does it do? And how do we tackle the problem of global poverty, for instance? So there's different ways of doing an international relations degree. One of them could be more about how to think about the world, and another one could be about how, more specifically, how is policy being made in an international public policy environment. And of course, the reality is that most students will end up doing a mix of both, right? So that when they come out, they have a good understanding of what's an appropriate ways of thinking about global problems of, say, collective action in an international relations context, right? How do we achieve things collectively in an international relations context? But also in terms of, then how do we actually make the policy? What institution do those policies, right? So it's a much more empirical sort of dimension. So most of the time they will straddle the two together.
So last but not least, I have many Vietnamese students, age 15, 16 years old now.
Yep.
Hoping to get into a very good UK university and study international relations.
Yep.
What would be your advice for them at this very young age? How could they prepare for that?
My advice would be, and it falls on to what I said earlier, learn a new language. Start engaging with a new language, and if by the time you apply to university, you have 2, 3 languages, even if they're not, fluent and so on. It's always of great help, no matter what the context is. The other one is take the time to consider the different options. Take the time to do a bit of shopping. Look at what universities offers, because international relations degree can vary a great deal. So some universities are much more specialized in terms of the kind of international relations that they do. If I'm thinking of, for instance, King's College, so their international relations degree is taught in the Department of War Studies, which means that, international relations in that context is a lot more about national security, military, war, peace and conflict, and so on. Whereas other universities will do that and other things as well, right? And so other universities will have a much more focus more on question of global environment, for instance, climate change, and so on. So it's really worth taking the time to look at what their offerings are in terms of what kind of MA do they have.
Yes.
Because most of the time it will be international relations and something else. International relations and law, international relations and peace and conflict, international relations. And so it's important to look at what's on offer. Or sometimes when it's simply called international relations, it's worth having a look at the modules that are being offered to give you a sense of what's their specialism.
I like that. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.